Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to Mondays Down South. The trio is back. I just realized I'm in the thick of wedding planning right now. There's just so much stuff that's going on, fresh off the bachelor trip with my two best friends right here on camera. And I'm just coming to the realization that these guys have been plugging away at Mondays Down South, just fast and furious, no weeks off. And I respect that completely. I literally just discovered this within the last minute and a half before we started the record. So, boys, shout out to you. Seriously, for continuing the bus here and just having it steamrolled down the highway. But how have you guys been? And we got obviously a lot to talk about today. We're going to launch into March Madness, NFL free agency. We're going to talk baseball. Maybe we'll even sneak in a little UFC 314. We've got a condensed time frame, so I will turn it over your way. But Evan, I'll shoot it over your way first. How are you doing, man? And how's everything going?
Doing great, man. Pumped to have baseball season back. So just been chilling, watching March Madness, a little baseball. Been out of town a couple times, but glad to be back on the pod and have the usual three on. And got a lot to talk about today. So
yeah, I'll jump right in with that. We haven't had the try screen in a minute, so good to have you back, Zach. For our we're actually Mondays down south during baseball season because we actually record on Mondays, which is nice. But no, it's been good. Baseball's been awesome. Watch my Mets just sweep the Blue Jays. Let's go Mets. So it's been a good week. I know Evan and I will give our little updates for our specific teams towards the end of the podcast. So I'll save it for that. Zach, good to have you back. Let's man. Let's start talking March Madness. It's game time.
All right, let's go. I'll start it off. I'm in a league of 35 people right now. I'm 98th percentile. I picked all Final Four teams to go this year, and I rarely do because I always have some ridiculous like Final Four upset. I know it's like not that braggadocious because all four of the one seeds win, which means I'm that dude that picks the 4 1 seeds. Like I'm that guy in every, ESPN tournament. Oh, this guy just goes with the one seeds. But I truly did not see any of them being beaten this year. And the reason I'll pick on one of the teams, Houston. Houston in the transfer portal got 2 lights out 3-point shooters, one from Baylor, right? And then I forget who the other guy was. But long story short, they were massive in the Duke game. And the only reason why they hung around, even as Duke had expanded their lead to like 12, 13 points there with like 5-6 minutes left. So anyways, like the reason I thought all 4 of these teams were going to go is like not only did they hold on to all like the skills that make them amazing, like with Houston, they're one of the best defenses in the country. They've always been that way, but they added in the offseason 2 sharpshooters. Now they're going to the NCAA championship. However, all with all due said, I am number 1 top place in my 35 person bracket. And if Florida wins tonight, I walk away with the victory. If Florida loses, I don't even end up in the top 5. Like there's not because there's like a couple of guys that have Houston, and the way the scoring system is, it's not Fibonacci sequence. It's just like now like this game is like worth the entire round of the first tournament, which I've always hated with these leagues. But long story short, go Florida tonight. I know Patrick Barnett will be happy about that. And honestly, this March Madness season has been bad from a first couple weeks perspective, but it's been great in the later weeks because these truly are the best teams that are going up against each other. But Sai, I'll kick it your way. How's March Madness been for you?
Yeah, we can dissect it more. As you guys know, I picked Michigan State to win it all because I just pick Michigan State every year. It's not because I was being super analytical. It's just my goal at the end of the year. The reality is I said this coming into March Madness, and I was talking to Evan and Patrick about this. I thought Florida was the team that if I was putting all bias aside, that's a team that I would have rolled with. That's actually who I had in my Final Four as well. I felt that with their guard play, and this is coming from someone who isn't a big time, I'm not watching college basketball as much as I am NBA, for example. But from what I've seen and the analysis I've done, just from what I see on the floor, the guard play that they have paired with the size of their bigs is a recipe for success in any tournament, especially in one where you need to be consistent, their three guards are unbelievable. And they all do different things super well. And I think that's what's made them really stand out to me throughout the course of the March Madness. So I'm not surprised to see them there. But to give credit where credit's due, Auburn was the number one overall seed for a reason. They put on a show. It was an amazing game. I just think Florida actually ended up being the more talented team, believe it or not, at least in terms of starting five. And I think that made the difference at the end. I mean, putting up, I always mix up their names because there's so many, but their guard putting up like 35 points in a Final Four game. He was unguardable. He was making every and one, hitting step back threes. He has that little right corner spot that he likes. And they got the bigs who just every offensive rebound they were ending up with. So that was amazing. And then I'm gonna let Evan talk about the second game a bit more, and then we can all provide our comments. But do you think the second game was more of a choke show from Duke or more of Houston being amazing? I think it could have been a combination of both. Houston obviously is an amazing team, but I want to get your perspective on that too, Evan, before we keep going.
Yeah, so much to dive into. Unfortunately, I couldn't watch much of the first 2 weekends just being out of town, although one of them was with a blast with you gents. But yeah, I think that this year obviously is the story of the chalk. I appreciate that Zach rebranded his successful Final Four predictions to just picking the top 4 seeds. But I do agree with you. Going in with you this year, it was really hard to pick those like kind of, 6-1 or 6-3 kind of upsets. Like that, these top teams were just so loaded. I think transfer portal has a lot to do with that. Auburn, I just think Florida's depth for me, I think, is actually what takes them over the top. Like Auburn, they felt a little bit tired. Like they got to that big first half lead and I thought they were able to hold on. But Florida they can play so many guys, and like the bigs, they have that rotation of bigs that can just, wear you down. And I guess, speaking to the Houston and Duke game, I think Houston just deserves so much credit with the way they come at you. Like they got off to such a bad start shooting that you'd think against a team like Duke that's just going to bury you. And they just never gave up. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's as simple as that. And they just kept coming at them. They cleaned some things up on the defensive end in the last 10 minutes of the game, whether it was, Duke just executing poorly, like I think Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple said after the game in their presser, but like Houston just came after him. And yeah, I mean, Duke had to help them out a lot with that, specifically with that bad turnover and the Proctor missed free throw. And the foul was egregious. That was 100% not a foul on Cooper Flagg, but so ultimately there was a lot to unpack there, but give Houston credit. And they made free throws down the stretch, and that's just their brand. That's their brand. They're never going to get tired. They're going to outwork you. They're going to defend for the entire 40 minutes, and they're going to give themselves a shot. So give them credit where credit's due, and I think that's we should just be doing that as opposed to picking on Duke too much.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
the spread says everything about this game tonight. Florida's minus 1.5. Duke was like minus 4.5 against Houston. It just goes to show you that Duke was the best team in college basketball this year. Just like no question. I think that if Duke played Houston again, if they played them 10 times in a row, Duke would walk away with 8 of those victories. Like, I don't even think it would be 6. I think it would be 8. I think this team is insane. And you could argue that Duke has the best depth out of any of these college basketball teams.
and the highest ceiling too with talent. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, these guys are, but that's also what I respect about Houston, right? Is like these guys are not these freshman juggernaut superstars. Like, yeah, they had a couple of guys from the transfer portal, but they also have had a lot of guys who have refurbished. Like they're back 1 year after the other playing under Kelvin Sampson. So I do respect the old ways of college basketball too that Houston's implemented, where like a lot of their guys, a lot of their starters have been there for like 2 or 3 years. And I think that's been really cool to see. And obviously they're now competing tonight for the national championship.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off you, Zach. I think you can give Houston credit the way they deserve for beating a team that everyone, or most people felt was better. But I still think you can pick on Duke for a colossal choke show because, in my opinion, it was a colossal choke show. It's a minute and a half to go. And not only do you have the ball to inbound, Auburn's guy reaches over and smacks your hand while you're trying to inbound, which I haven't seen in like a century. So they give you a free throw, you get the ball back, and you can't inbound the ball in twice. You get stymied twice from trying to inbound the ball in and turn it over twice. Are you kidding me? Like that is like you're supposed to be the best team in the nation. Like that is absolutely embarrassing to me. Like I get Duke's an amazing team. They've had an amazing year. I'm not trying to say they had a bad year, but there's a reason they were favored by 4.5. In my opinion, when you have a 7-point lead, and I get the foul call against Cooper Flagg was egregious, But even if that didn't happen, you still had a multiple possession lead. You should be finishing that game if you're the best team in the nation. You have the best player in the nation. I'm not putting this on Cooper because Cooper had an amazing game, just like he has every game of the NCAA tournament. But I think he probably needed a little bit more help at the end there. You need to finish that game. Flip side of that, though, is Houston's defense is amazing. That's been their MO. As much as they have the 3-point shooters, that team is built on their defense. I think everyone knew that, and they showed up, especially being down double digits coming into the second half. I at one point said, "Oh, this game's over. Duke's up by double digits with like 10 minutes to go. Like Houston's not going to have the offense to keep up with Duke." I was wrong because Houston's defense did such a good job of keeping it in, which is why Houston deserves credit because most teams are not winning that game if they're down double digits against Duke. I think Houston is an anomaly in that way. But I still want to fault Duke for blowing this game. I mean, let's just be clear here. Like as impressive as Houston was at the end, they gave them a chance to come back by making turnover after turnover in big moments and then not hitting shots when they needed to. So if you're going to be the best team in the nation, you need more than just Cooper to show up in the big moments. That's how I look at it.
So, but what were the choke moments? I think there was only one inbound they didn't get in.
It was back to back.
I don't think it was back to back. I think Proctor dribbled one off his leg and the other end of the court, but that was like more defensive pressure. I think that I only remember one inbound, and then the missed free throw for me is almost like, why are we getting the ball to Proctor? It was obvious he was going to miss with his free throw performance in this tournament. So I think
that's from them too, right? Like
yeah, for sure. I think it's youth first experience, but like there were two bad plays, bad call, and then ultimately it was just like Houston's defense stopping their offense, which obviously there's part of that is the Duke not executing their sets as well as they like. But I mean, obviously they had to have blown to blow that lead. You have to make a lot of mistakes. So you're right.
I mean, I just think they gave them every chance to get back in it. When I said the back-to-back turnovers, just touching on it real quick, it wasn't that both of them counted as turnovers. It was they tried to inbounds twice. One of them he throws it right into a guy with an Auburn guy right there, and he gets a hand on it. He gets lucky that it turned out over, and then immediately after he does the same thing to another guy, and then they turn that one over. So that's where, and then you immediately pass the ball to a guy who can't shoot a free throw, so then he gets fouled. It's just, you know what I'm saying? Like you got to do better. You got to execute better than that in that moment. Like
Here's the choke show right here. Houston held Duke to a grand total of one field goal over the last 10 and a half minutes of play. I mean, one field goal in the last 10 minutes in crunch time, that is the definition of what Sai's saying.
Houston could do that to you. Houston could do that to you, though.
They can, but they shouldn't be able to do that to the number one overall team in the nation with the best player. I'm saying it's like you want to give Houston equal parts credit. I'm not taking anything away from them. They deserve to be in the championship game, and it wouldn't shock me if they won with how amazing that defense is. But they definitely aren't winning that game without Duke also making the mistakes that they did, which if you're the best team in the nation and you're the team that's favored by 4.5, you shouldn't be making those mistakes. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, the two weaknesses of Duke coming in, they were very small and they were few and far between, but inexperience and not having played in any close games that year. And I think that kind of played out. So the one cool thing I wanted to mention is, I don't know if you guys watched many of the big Duke games, like right at the beginning of the year, like some of those big tournaments and stuff. And there were two games I watched where it came down to Cooper Flagg having the ball in his hands at the last possession of the game. And basically both times were like a carbon copy where they really forced it to him and he like turned it over, like slipped. And I was like, I totally thought it was going to come down to that same situation here in the Final Four, but this time he was going to deliver and he just came up a little short. Give Roberts credit for the defense. But I want to pose a question. I think, Zach, you kind of brought this up at one point, but is Cooper Flagg the best college basketball player we've seen in our lifetimes, not just freshmen, altogether? That's the prompt I got for you.
The answer is no, as much as I want to say yes, because he's one of the most versatile athletes. Anthony Davis at Kentucky will forever hold that title, in my opinion. He was just so dominant, that he was unstoppable and the best at his position. Cooper is exciting because he's got more of a shot than people have given him credit. And just knowing his work ethic and knowing his potential and his height, like the way he can move with the basketball for his height is really, really cool, because he's going to transition into an epic power forward in the league, especially when he can shoot deep. But he's going to have to work on a shot in the offseason. But I would say he's close. I want to say yes, but I'm going to give the nod to AD. But Sai, what do you think?
It's funny. I think we were talking a little about this in Austin where we're celebrating our amazing bachelor over here.
Yeah.
But I actually lean Zach's way as well, but it's extremely close. And I think the only reason, like if I'm taking a step outside and looking in, I think the only reason sometimes I feel this way, and maybe I'm contradicting myself a little bit, is that obviously Anthony Davis was incredible and Cooper Flag is incredible. They're not the same position. AD was more of your like big man in college and who could space the floor. Cooper is more of a true forward and who can also play big when he needs to. Is kind of the energy that I get. But if I'm really thinking about it, I think part of the reason I lean Anthony is because of the aura of that Kentucky team. Like Duke obviously felt amazing and felt like a team that was going to win this year, but that Kentucky team felt unbeatable. Like where it was like, even though they didn't end up winning the year that year that we're thinking of, I think 95% of brackets or whatever picked that Kentucky team to win it all, and Anthony Davis was the catalyst of that, and he was just so menacing, like where you couldn't even drive on that team. I think that's the difference. But if I'm taking all of that out of it and I'm just looking at it, they're neck and neck, man. Like you could make an honest like argument for Cooper. I think it's just a matter of like it just felt like a different aura at that time, man. I think that's the only difference. They're both right there for me.
Yeah. I think 80 is probably the right answer, but I kind of want to pick Cooper here with recency bias. It's just unbelievable to me how he can guard 1 through 5. He can play 1 through 5 offensively. It's almost like LeBron in that sense, but he's a blast to watch.
Well, I also think him being a Wizard, next year is probably going to make you a bit biased early up front. I hope he does.
I need it. So before we jump, who wins the game? Who wins the game?
I was just going to ask you guys this. I'll go first. I've been rounded out with, outside of my like own match just for fun. I felt Florida was going to be the best team this year in the tournament because of the way they spread it out. I'm not going against it. I think UF wins tonight, and Zach takes home some money.
Zach, yeah. Florida. It's not even gonna be close. They got like the LJ Criers and the LJ Crier is gonna be crying tonight, and he's gonna be pretty upset with his Houston Cougars getting absolutely torched by big boy basketball, where you got the offensive rebounding and you got the 3 sharpshooter guards who all play stylistically different. To your point, Evan, from Florida's perspective. So give me a big day from Clayton Jr. and it's going to be a field day right from the jump. Florida wins big, -1.5.
Oh, I don't think there's any way it's not going to be close. I think this, but my initial gut maybe said Florida, so maybe this is going with my heart a little bit, but I'm going to go with Houston. I'm going to give you 2 reasons. I mean, this is a great stylistic opposites matchup where Houston wants to play slow and efficient on offense. Florida wants to play fast and shoot threes. So it's who's ever going to impose their style on the other team. On offense, obviously, Florida's going to want to shoot a lot of threes. Houston's elite defensively against the 3. That one's pretty straightforward. I think that's going to be huge. And then both are great offensive rebounding, like you meant, Zach. But one of these teams is also good at defensive rebounding, and the other is not. Houston's great defensive rebounding. Florida's not. So I think that's going to be a huge factor.
It's true.
And then on the other end, it's the depth. Florida, I think, just has way more depth that could wear down Houston. So I think those are the kind of the matchups. But give me Houston.
I do want to say one thing. Florida proved last game, though, against Auburn, who was favored, that when the threes weren't happening, that they could get to the rim, and multiple of their guards did, and that's where they were drawing the N1s, and that's when they ended up winning the game and taking over. So they are more versatile than I think sometimes people give them credit for. So I do want to throw that out there. But I know we need to move on. We only got probably like another 25 minutes of the episode. I do want to give a quick shout out, even as a Gamecock, another amazing season from our Lady Gamecocks, but yesterday was not our day. Finished second after winning last year. I want to give a shout out to UConn, Paige Beckers, a strong down low, their freshman, and to Ariema. That was an amazing, dominant season from UConn again after a long time. So got to give a shout out to the women's basketball tournament as well for another amazing year and more talent out there. It's been fun to watch.
Love it. Should we go to NFL free agency, gentlemen?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So, yeah, obviously not a lot of NFL content lately, and we've been busy with baseball, March Madness, so we do want to sneak in just, kind of a tidy up on NFL free agency. We're, a few weeks old by this point, but, felt it was important to talk about this before the draft. So I don't know how you guys want to cue it up if you guys want to talk about teams or players, but, like, what are some of your most noteworthy kind of teams or player signings on the good end or the bad end, or unless you guys have another way to go?
Ev, I want to start with your team. What do you think of the Commanders, including the trade, getting Deebo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil? It looks like you guys were we're not wasting any time. How do you feel about where you allocated your resources this offseason and kind of the moves that were made?
Yeah, good. I mean, the Debo one, I wasn't like jumping out of my chair about because, like, probably even guilty of suggesting he's a little washed, maybe a little overrated at this point. But scheme wise, he's going to fit so perfectly with Kingsbury. And you think about like all the screen passes they would throw to De'Ami Brown for gosh sakes, are now going to go to Debo Samuel. So, like I think in that sense it'll work really well. And then the Tunsil one I think is huge. Like getting a franchise Pro Bowl level left tackle. Obviously, he had an issue with the penalties last year, so hopefully he cleans that up this offseason in a new system. But I think that one's huge. You can move Brandon Coleman, the rookie we had last year, over to right tackle or right guard. And with Sam Cosmi, our best offensive lineman out, it just provides depth there. So I think that's huge. Then they just added a ton of depth otherwise. The Kinlaw one was bizarre to me, but when you dive into the contract, it's not as egregious as it looks on paper at whatever the money was. And the defensive line is interesting. They added tons of just beefy, like big, which is kind of clearly indicating that the fear of Saquon Barkley in the division and knowing that that's the team you have to beat. So they almost added tons of like big like defensive tackle types, and you might see some like 5-2 fronts or even just like 3 defensive tackles on the line on early downs kind of thing, and less of like the edge rush type is maybe my concern that they haven't really addressed. So I think the defensive line is interesting, and then they just brought back kind of the core pieces, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, who were great last year, key veterans, bringing them back. So yeah, some of the defensive line and that kind of stuff has me, I don't want to say puzzled, but like intrigued how that's going to look when the season starts. But I think they did a good job addressing kind of the key big needs.
Yeah, I think I can give you a note about Kinlaw because he's a Gamecock. So I watched him all through South Carolina, and I watched him get drafted by the 49ers first round. I think it was a top 10 pick, actually. So the thing with Kinlaw is you haven't, like, he's a high ceiling guy, but then he hasn't been super consistent, which is why he was available when he was available. But at his ceiling, he is a menace in the middle. It's like one of those guys you have to start double teaming because he starts breaking through, and he's great in run stopping, which I assume is why he got that money because he's still pretty young. So you're basically trying to replace John Allen with the guy who's younger, who has a higher ceiling at this stage of his career. As sad as I am to see John go, I love the Debo signing. Again, biased Gamecock. But the thing is, even if he is washed, you made the point about De'Ami Brown, being older. Debo at his worst is 10 times better De'Ami Brown at his best. And I mean that with no offense to De'Ami Brown. I'm talking about Debo's ceiling. I think with him not having the amount of injuries that he had last year, I think that's why people think he's washed. Just 2 years ago, he was like an all-pro caliber player, and he came into last year very banged up. The 49ers overall were banged up. The way you're going to space out the ball between Terry McLaurin, between Brian Robinson, who Debo can take some weight off your running backs too, as a guy who can take some carries and get him the ball in space. I think it'll be a beautiful pairing with Jaden having a second wide receiver now. You needed that in your offense, quite frankly. I think you needed a second guy who had a different skill set than Terry, who can give you the short and intermediate routes the way Debo can. So I think that was a perfect pairing. And of course, you can never be mad about the left tackle. My number one thing is I'm assuming in the draft or through another round of free agency, that secondary is my concern. I know you're not as concerned about it, but I am curious to see what you do about that. But you've addressed other needs up front. Zach, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Zach. I mean, it was pretty good acquisition of a bunch of those guys that were coming from the 49ers to the Commanders. And I think with Debo, and I mean this with all due respect, but he needed a lot of humble pie. I think he had thought he was like a top 5 wide receiver, and at certain points he was like fringe, and he's such a talented, versatile guy. So I think that this trade, and I mean this like really good for him. Like I think that this trade was that humble pie. Like, oh, he's not going to be a 49er for life. Oh, he has gained a lot more weight than he said he was going to, which maybe has impacted his speed and some of the comments that you've seen like rotating online between him and his trainers and all like that. Debo has an opportunity to come in at a shred for the wed type of body where he is like ready to rock and roll, new team, new style. He's trying to prove himself. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's a guy who was a 3-star recruit that went to South Carolina. Like, he wasn't even heavily recruited. And look what he did at South Carolina. And obviously he went to the Super Bowl his first year as a receiver, and he was the number 1 receiver in that group. And so we know what he's capable of. This could be a shining, like, a new opportunity for him to prove exactly what he's destined to be. So like I think this is going to be a great move for Debo. He's going to get used in that Cliff Kingsbury system, which is great. And I would just say, like for my team, I think that the Vikings did a really good job because they were able to maintain Byron Murphy, who is a low-key like a stud corner. He's good. He's good, kind of in like that Richard Sherman, like man at first, then play that one side of the field. He's also good in full-on man coverage where he's zigzagging across the field on like mesh routes and whatnot. And he's also just like he's just a very good all-around corner. They also brought in Isaiah Rodgers. They brought in Jonathan Allen from the defensive side, and they said, JJ McCarthy, we're going to give you the keys. Hopefully, you're ready.
I want to give a shout out to the Bears and the Chiefs. Those are the two teams that I think did a lot. Chiefs kept the guys they needed to keep. They re-signed Hollywood, who they didn't have for most of the year, which they need going into this year, especially getting Rashee Rice back. Their offense will be significantly better, even with Travis Kelce having taken some steps back, and they have some things they can address. They also signed another offensive lineman, which was a massive need given the issue that they had against the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and they clearly had to take care of that. You want to talk about a Colts player that went to a team that is awesome and has a huge ceiling? Dayo Odebo, it's pretty hard to pronounce his name. He is awesome, and he's someone that we wanted to keep, but we have too much money tied into our D-line. The Chicago Bears got him for a really good price. He is going to be a menace on that team. Just watch out for him. He joins a defensive line that's already very good and adds to him. And also the Bears, the smartest thing they could have done after they sign a head coach who wants to run first and then throw the football second with Ben Johnson is they address their interior linemen on both sides of the field. Their offensive line is significantly better. Their defensive line is significantly better. And they didn't sign a bunch of old guys to do it. They signed a bunch of guys that are still in somewhat the prime of their career who have multiple years going forward that are going to make them good. The Bears could be awesome this year if Caleb Williams can develop into what he's capable of being. So I just want to see what Ben Johnson can do with it. I trust that man fully. I think he's going to do a good job. They have the weapons and they did exactly what they needed. Now the draft, they can do whatever they want. Like they're not lacking skill position players. They're not lacking players. Maybe they can add one more secondary guy. Maybe they can add another lineman. They're in a position where they're playing with fire. Like they have nothing to worry about. So I think the Bears did an awesome job.
Love it. Give me the Broncos. The Broncos are one of my teams. I mean, they didn't do it. They didn't make a ton of moves, but I mean, I love Dre Greenlaw and name pronunciation. I'm awful at Talnoa Hufanga from the Niners, both of them. You know, if Greenlaw's healthy after the injury, obviously there's some questions about that and just kind of consistency in play, but I think those are two great additions. And the Evan Ingram ad for the offense, I think could not be more perfect. I was so obsessed with that pickup for them and that fit for Evan Ingram. Just give him a tight end weapon to go with Sutton and all the young guys there. So I'm big on the Broncos.
Broncos is a good one. Go ahead, Zach.
What was your favorite free agent signing as opposed to like from a team perspective? Because I personally think Tre'Davious Ward from the 49ers to the Colts, it just makes me realize, and I know it's 2020 hindsight bias, but if the Skins had just held off a little bit longer, or if the Commanders just held off a little bit longer, they could have bypassed Marshawn Lattimore, and they could have gone with Tre'Davious Ward, who would have been such a key asset in that man-to-man play. So I thought that was a great pickup by the Colts.
Yeah, you kind of stole mine. I'm obviously biased, but we got Tre'Davious Ward and Bynum. I kind of wanted to talk about what we did in general, but this is a perfect time to do it. Ward is my favorite signing that we have made in years. And I think there's a reason we made it. It's because Chris Ballard, you know, he's sitting on the edge of his seat, and he like his whole philosophy of not signing free agents to a ton of money and going through the draft has built a very good like team in terms of youth. But the issue has been that we haven't turned that into playoff success or into being a playoff team. So I know he feels the pressures on him. So he was forced to make signings this year, and he said he was going to do it. And I think he made the right signings. He put the money into a secondary that needed the help. We still got a couple of young guys who fit perfectly into our number 2 and number 3 roles at corner. And then we still have Kenny Moore, who's still one of the best slot corners in the NFL. You put Tre'Davious Ward as our number 1, and then you put Bynum, who was an absolute playmaker coming over from the Vikings, who was one of their favorite secondary guys. We got a menacing secondary for the first time since Vontae Davis was a Colt, the guy who quit on the Bills halfway through a game. It's a whole different world in the secondary. Our team basically comes down to do we get quarterback play or not? I mean, our secondary is good. We're not like the greatest skill position team, but Jonathan Taylor is still amazing. We still have a great offensive line. We addressed that. I'm not worried about that. We just need quarterback play, and we signed Daniel Jones, which is funny. Like, if Daniel Jones wins the quarterback competition, I think I'm going to be crying in the club this offseason. We'll see what happens. I'll leave it at that. But Ward was my pick. Zach stole it. I will also throw out a one quick one and then let Evan jump on. Devontae Adams to the Rams. If they were going to move on from Cooper Kupp, perfect fit. Like, if they were going to compete for 1 or 2 more years, Devontae is not washed at all. You saw it at the end of the year last year when they kind of let him loose. He was burning people still with his route running. He's the perfect complement to Puka Nacua across the field. Matt Stafford gets another guy for a year that he can, dump the ball off to and have a lot of like quick slot routes. He was a perfect fit for the Rams. I just want to put that one out there.
Yeah, a couple quick guys for me. I mean, Javon Holland to the Giants. I really wanted him with the Commanders. I thought that was a good pickup. The Giants are a mess with what they're doing at the quarterback position. I don't really understand it, but I think they've done a decent job with the rest of the roster. Cardinals getting Josh Sweat was a big pickup for them as well, from some of the lesser big name teams. But
you got any, Zach?
I like the Devontae Adams one too, because they got him for 2-year, $44 million, and Cooper Kupp signed 3-year, $45 million at Seattle. So, like you mentioned, Cy, it's a 1-2 year gap, and they're going to be shelling out the same amount of money if they kept Cooper Kupp, who is washed, and Devontae's got probably 2 more years in him, and so I think it was worth it from a money standpoint, even though it was one less year. Like, that's the shot they got to take. They knew that they had about $45 million in cap space for that particular wide receiver instead of paying Cooper Kupp to end his career as a Ram. Like, it's a business, and Devontae's just, he's got a quicker step. He's less injured. I think he is younger, and why not just take that risk with a perennial superstar? So I think it was the right call on the Rams end.
Yeah, their front office and Sean McVay are just so smart. Like, they just continue every year to like make the right decision year in, year out. As much as I love Cooper Kupp, and they are obsessed with Cooper Kupp, they're just a smart institution. I want to give a quick shout out to the Patriots, who did a lot on the defensive side, and also added. I'm not the biggest Stephon Diggs guy at this stage of his career, so that part I wasn't the biggest fan of. But at least in the interim, giving Drake May some confidence by giving him someone to throw the ball to. I'm not saying they're to compete this year, but you need to give your rookie quarterback or your young quarterback some sort of safety blanket. And so far, his best receiver has been like Bourne, or I don't know, guys most people can't name. So I'm glad that they're at least like trying to protect their young guys. So I'll give them credit where credit's due. That
I'm so out on that. Like, have we not learned what a toxic person Stephon Diggs is in the locker room by this point? Like, I just feel like that's become pretty clear. Like, I don't know why you would want to instill that into a young locker room with a rookie quarterback that's still building. Like, I just do not like that at all. And on the field, you do need to get Drake May some help, but I feel like it's become pretty clear what Stephon Diggs was about, and there was a reason that the Texans really were not vibing what he was bringing to the table, besides the fact that he wasn't very good on the field.
Well, I mean, they're not trying to compete. I mean, they're not going to compete this year. So I'm just saying, I don't mind. Stephon Diggs is not the reason I picked the Patriots as a team to give credit to. They added multiple stud defensive players at a good price who were still young. So I thought was genius, because they needed to address their defense. And they're giving not Belichick, they're giving Gerard Mayo, who they moved on from. Now they're giving their new coach pieces to work with, right? So that's the issue they had in the past. And then you just sign Diggs because you're like, you know what? Drake May can have a year to just throw the ball to someone, even if he's a bit dramatic, whatever. It's someone he can throw the ball to while they figure out the receiver plan, because it was an abysmal situation, and you can't have Drake continue to take hits and lose confidence because of that circumstance. That's enough about the Patriots, because they're not going to be super competitive next year.
Just to close out, that's why I hate the Diggs one, though, because if you're not trying to compete, then why are you bringing in a guy that's probably going to hurt your culture in the locker room, especially when you haven't established that culture yet with a new coach? But I do agree they did a really good job this offseason overall. Otherwise,
yeah, maybe they just felt like they're confident with Vrabel to be able to kind of put that foot down.
That'll be fun.
He's not someone I'd mess with if I was a player. I'll be very honest with you. He did a very good job in Tennessee without a lot of talent of making them a very competitive team. What did you guys think of the Steelers? Is what I want to know. What do you guys think their offseason? Or do you have any teams whose offseason that have been who you think has been terrible? I'll give you one. The Houston Texans have been awful this offseason. They traded away
Yeah.
2 of their offensive linemen. Obviously, did not retain after having a year where their offensive line was terrible, and then did not retain Diggs, which I get because of the locker room situation. But you don't know what's going to happen with Tank Dell, which is awful. I feel terrible for the guy, and I hope he gets to play. But that team is like way less menacing coming into this year than they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more. That
Yeah,
situation is a
I
mess.
agree.
I don't know what the plan was there.
I did want to plug UFC real quick.
Oh,
Do
yeah,
it.
go.
Go for it, Zach.
All right, so UFC 314. It's going to be actually a really good card. Only Jeff Neal has pulled out, but let me see here. Let me just get the card up because Chandler's the co-main, and I know that there's a couple of studs that are fighting. 1 second. All right.
Yeah,
there we go.
Oh, you
Oh
go.
yeah, it's Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. That's going to be crazy. Diego's obviously coming for the belt, and that would be and the belt is actually, isn't that a title for the belt because Ilya's going up to lightweight?
It's featherweight. Which one?
Featherweight.
Bulk?
Yeah, featherweight. Oh wait, no. Yeah, featherweight. Yeah, because bantamweight is 135. And then you got Chandler and Patty Pimblett. That's going to be an amazing one. The funniest plug here is that Dustin Poirier has a announcing position for this card, and like UFC is really using this as an example. It's like, hey man, you only have one fight left. We almost thought that last year when he fought Islam, that was going to be his final fight. Dustin has then said, hey, I want to fight one more time, and it's just going to be like a good outro fight. So the UFC is trying to get him plugged in and be like, hey, stay within the UFC community. We would love to have you on as an announcer. We're going to give you one of your first big primary shots, like play-by-play announcing at UFC 314. Let's see how you do. And of course, Michael Chandler is fighting on that fight. And Patty Pimblett has like called Dustin Poirier out so many times. Dustin cannot stand this guy. And so it's going to be hilarious to see him to try to, from an unbiased perspective, which is impossible, literally like announce that fight the entire time because he hates Chandler so much. And he calls him fake and he calls Patty fake. It's just going to be hilarious. So it's going to be an amazing card. Also, Yair Rodriguez is fighting and he's on the main card, but like the first fight on the main card, it's going to be crazy. Ev, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, this is great. I didn't know the Poirier thing, but the top two. I mean, Volk is so underrated. I mean, that dude is unbelievable, and Diego Lopez is an absolute blast to watch. And then Chandler Pimblett is like a dream, just fun fight. Like it's just going to be so chaotic and so much energy. And then you mentioned Yair, like Dan Ige is fun on the card. Bryce Mitchell,
Dominic Reyes got good striking.
And there was one Chase Hooper even down on like the prelims. Yeah, I think this is gonna be a fun one. This is definitely one to watch. Anyways, we'll a lot covered. Great episode. We'll see it. Try to package it up nicely, take some stuff out for you guys in a more digestible 50 minutes or so. But a lot of fun chopping it up across a bunch of different sports. So, Sai, you got any last words?
That's it, man. Great episode. I'm just happy to have all the sports on at the same time. It's a good time for sports. We also have the NFL draft coming in a few weeks, so keep that in mind. We got to be prepped for that as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
I guess next week more baseball and then draft probably is the rest of April, something like that. So, all right. Thanks everyone for watching as always.
Mondays Down South.